Hi, and welcome back to the channel Channeling by Penny and Sarah. And today, with absolutely no further ado, I'm actually handing straight over to the inimitable Sarah Sands-Smith.
Hello everyone, so I'm Sara Sands-Smith, hypnotherapist and channeler, and I have with me, as many of you know, Penny Dix, astrologer and channeler. And we're going to do something slightly different today. Last week Penny interviewed me, so this week I'm going to interview her and give her a bit of a grilling. And we have not prepared this, so she doesn't know what's coming.
Oh dear.
Does that sound scary?
Oh, very, very, very.
Well, it's not meant to.
Okay.
Right,
Okay.
so let's...
Oh, gosh. This is quite scary.
Oh, is it? Do you feel like you're being interrogated?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go in with a bit of a left field question.
Oh.
So, if I was writing a screenplay of your life, how would you summarise your life in an exciting way that's going to get everyone energised and want to watch the rest of this interview?
Wow.
What are the highlights?
Wow. The highlights are, okay, off the top of my head, pop singer extraordinaire becomes money broker in New York, followed by an incredibly bad breakdown, which leads her into becoming a psychotherapist. And then suddenly, during all of this, with the understanding of astrology and the astrological movements of the cosmos, she kind of discovers the islands of Mortar and Gozo and feels there is something rather interesting and like a kind of almost reincarnational pull to return to these islands. And when her mother has a stroke, she decides, rather than be her full-time carer in England, she decides she will take her mother with her to Gozo. And so that is what she does. And then that's the spoiler alert.
Right, okay. So that actually sounds like quite a good script. Maybe...
Would you want to watch?
Well, I think so. But it's like the first 3 minutes or something is the most important, isn't it? That has to hook you. So
right.
Maybe we would start it in the present day and work our way backwards.
Okay.
But maybe we should turn that into a screenplay.
Gosh, yes. Who would play me?
Oh, you? So, what really sort of led you onto the spiritual path? Was there somebody that inspired you, or what really sort of took you down that sort of route, and how did you start out on that path?
I guess right from a very small age, I don't know how to describe it, because I don't know if anybody else has the same kind of feelings that I do, but I kind of felt much, this sounds strange, but I felt as if my spirit, my soul was much bigger than my physicality, as if there was this enormous energy that seemed to stretch out far beyond my sort of physical limits. And from quite a young age, I was terribly interested in the movements of the planets. And so my very first book that my parents bought me was all about the solar system, because I really wanted to learn about the solar system, because I felt that's where I belonged, that I'd come from there and that was where I would go back to. So I think that's probably what started me on my spiritual path. And also, I'll add, my auntie, who was my mother's eldest sister, used to read the tea leaves.
Right.
And from a very young age, she taught me how to read the tea leaves. And then she led me into meeting a friend of hers who was kind of like known as the witch in the woods, who brought out the tarot.
Wow. So what age did you learn to read the tarot?
12. I was 12 when I learned to read the tarot. And I was very good. And spookily good, so that people, and I'm not boasting, right? It was just, I seemed to be very good, and I seemed to be able to just instinctively know what was going to happen. But then, I don't know whether you found this, but as I got older, I almost started to shut down that side of me, because life comes in and you start doing other things, and you've got hormones, and suddenly boys, men, anything of the opposite sex was kind of sort of calling to me. So that it was always, but the spiritual side was always there in the background, I would say.
Right, okay. And how did you actually end up with a pop singing career?
Ah.
How did that come about?
Because this is really quite funny. When I was a child, when people used to, you know how they say to you as a child, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? I used to say, I want to be a famous star. I didn't realise that meant I wanted to be an astrologer. Because in a sense, that is almost what has happened, kind of thing. And so I never said, oh, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a teacher, or any of those kind of professions, which was to the despair, I have to add, of my parents, because my father was a chartered accountant. And so he wanted me to have something sensible to do in my life. And he struggled and tried to put me on a path of normality, and probably failed miserably most of the time. So I don't know whether that really answers the question, or whether I've kind of gone off at a tangent and whittled away.
No, that's fine. I'll bring you back onto the path. So, so you mentioned that some emotional problems led you to becoming a psychotherapist.
Yes.
So how did that come about, and what made you think that that was the path you wanted to follow at that point in time?
Okay. Well, I realise now that I didn't actually answer your first question about what brought me into the pop industry. And being a famous star, and I actually got to the point, I was very good at singing. And I loved singing. And again, I'm not boasting, it's just I can sing. You know, I'm a singer. I sang from as far back as I could remember. And then I'll try and remember the next question you asked me. But you can always remind me what it was. But as the singing went on, I eventually, when I was about in my mid-teens, like 16, 17, I met someone who actually worked in films. I met that person in Malta. And he was a lot older than me, but he kind of took me under his wing and wanted to be my manager to work in the pop industry. And I got a record contract, and I had two records out. One was called Guava Jelly. I had a name called Abigail Brown. And the second record was The Woman in Me. And they were, I was produced by quite a well-known producer, musical producer called Richard Hewson, who produced a lot of the sort of, he produced Carly Simon's Nobody Does It Better, which was for one of the Bond films.
The Spy Who Loved Me, I believe.
Is that the one?
I think so,
yes,
yeah,
okay, yeah. Okay. So that's how I got into the pop industry. And what was the second question?
Pay attention.
I'm sorry.
You're cracking.
Oh, the breakdown.
Yeah, you'd be no good under interrogation, would you? I mean,
I'll tell you
a useless spy.
What do you want to know?
Yeah, I'll talk. Whereas, I wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't.
Be like, no, that's not my name.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so what sort of led you to actually thinking you'd like to become a psychotherapist? What took you down that path?
Again, from quite a young age, I would say I really struggled with anxiety. That was my main problem, anxiety. And she's got the iPad with the notes on. I have to keep reminding you to touch it to keep the picture up.
Because I'm an attentive interviewer, so. Yes. But actually I'm ad-libbing a lot as well. So
You're doing very well. I feel very interviewed.
Oh, good.
So I struggled a lot with anxiety, and I think back then it was always really diagnosed as depression rather than anxiety. Although I think my main problem was always anxiety and panic attacks rather than depression as such. And I reached a point because I lived in New York for a year. I'd worked in London for a while as a trainee money broker, believe it or not, which was a horrific experience for me. But I was very good at the business lunches because I seemed to have a capacity to be able to keep up with all the lads on the sort of the drinking front. And that was when sort of business lunches in the city was a big thing. And of course, my father had got me this job because he was despairing of what to do with me and was trying to teach me, I can see now reflecting back, to be independent. And I didn't want to be independent. I liked being looked after by my, mummy and daddy. And I use those words deliberately because it was, it doesn't paint a very good picture of me or an image. I was very, I found it very difficult to actually cut the cords, cut the ties with my parents. I liked them. And I enjoyed their company and I enjoyed doing all the things that they involved me in. And that included him sending me to New York to work in the New York office, which lasted about a year. And through that time, it really eroded my self-confidence, my belief in myself. I thought I would go to New York and meet lots of nice people and interesting people and maybe fall in love and meet some lovely man and all of that. And part of the reason I'd gone to New York was because a guy in England had broken my heart. And I said, right, that's it. I'm going. You shall never see me again. And I didn't for 25 years, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole.
No, I'm not going to let you go down that rabbit hole.
I know. However, what happened next was I came back to the UK and back to my parents' house, and I spent the next 6 weeks in bed in a state of terrible, what I can only describe, depression and panic and anxiety and complete total failure. Interestingly, it was coming up to my Saturn return, what is called my first Saturn return,
right.
which is when you can experience great life changes. And my parents were advised by my GP to find me a therapist, that therapy might be something that helped. And at that time, because we're going back to the sort of early 80s, I suppose, it wasn't something that was particularly common. And I went into therapy. And I can still remember the first thing my therapist said to me during that first session, after I'd kind of wittered like this and rambled for sort of poor chap 50 minutes, which we hope this interview won't be that long. We're keeping an eye on the time. No, the therapist hour, 50 minutes, And he said to me, "You're not dancing the dance of life." And I listened and I thought, oh no, the cosmic dance. That's what he said. He said, "You're not dancing the cosmic dance." And he showed me a small statue he'd got of Shiva, like I have sitting up on my shelf up there. And you've got the sort of, she's got 4 arms, I think, hasn't she? She's the creatress and the destroyer. The destroyer and the creatress, a little bit like the Ouroboros when we saw in our UAP. And that really resonated with me. And I think he connected with me on a level. He was a Jungian psychotherapist, and he connected with me on a level that I thought, I want to know more. I want to go down this path. I'm really curious. And through that, I had 2 years of therapy, during which time I just kept saying to him, I want to be one. I want to be a therapist. I want to train as a therapist. Because I thought, if I train as a therapist, it'll help me understand me better. And that was the driver for me to learn therapy, was to actually train as a therapist. I didn't think at that point about being a therapist that worked with people, with real people.
Oh,
I mean, good God.
No,
Let me loose on people. I don't think so.
So interestingly, we are both only children.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes. How do you think being an only child has actually impacted your life?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I think that I found it or find it very hard to share anything that belongs to me. But I'm very good at being on my own. I'm very good at providing my own entertainment. I don't need to be in company. I'm very used to being on my own because basically I've always been on my own, and of course we are always on our own. And sometimes if we're in a relationship, we can be more on our own in a relationship than when we're actually on our own.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah. So that I think as an only child, did I miss having siblings? I don't know, because I don't know what I'm missing.
Exactly.
But I had cousins. I had 2 lovely cousins who are around the same age as me, and they were like a brother and sister, and we're very close, and we're still very close. And they're really super excited about me returning to the UK. You know, so I'm really excited because suddenly it's like I do want to be near family, but I don't know if that answers your question about being an only child.
It does, yes. I mean, I think, you know, it is something that we have talked about, you know, and I think it's something that, for me, it made me very independent, very self-sufficient. And I think that it's something which it does give you different kind of life skills to be to when you have siblings, and maybe you have to sort of shout loud to get heard, that kind of thing. But I guess, you know, talking about going back to the UK brings me onto your time in Gozo. I mean, you know, so you moved here
in 2004, 2004, so
Right.
20 years ago. It'll be 21 years on 25th of June, 2025.
So you talked a bit about sort of being drawn to the islands, and what do you feel that's about? What sort of drew you to the islands?
Past life stuff. And I know that we've discussed that we will do some past life regression at some time, and we just haven't been able to fit it into our busy schedule. But when I first came to Malta and Gozo in 1968, I just thought, I've come home. This is where I belong. This is my home. And I decided at that point, when I was about 12, I'm going to live here. I'm coming back. I'm going to come home. And I was just sort of had that belief all the way through. But I had an image, which was like a memory, when I came to Gozo and went to the area around Tachench, which is an area where they believe there was an ancient temple that stood, similar to Gajantia, that kind of, and it's probably on ley lines and all of that.
It is, because I've been doing some research on it. So the ley line that we explored in our video yesterday, and if you haven't watched that, do go and have a look at it as we show you the village that we live in. It links from ley lines here up to the temple Sara and across to Tachench. So it's reckoned that there's sort of 3 ley lines. Which link everything together.
Okay, because I know it goes through Shaukia, where I used to live.
Exactly, which
and
is
through the church there, because there was a temple there.
Yes, exactly. And that is apparently the 3rd biggest church, Christian church. Or
yes, the dome is in the world.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a very significant place, and it's the...
And then I think it's Mostar.
Yes.
And then it's St. Peter's in Rome, the Vatican.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a very significant location. So you felt the energy from there, did you?
Yes, I felt the energy, but going back to very much Neolithic pagan sort of roots, and I just kept getting this memory. And all I can say is the memory was that I was a young child, or maybe a sort of 10-year-old, and I was sitting on, because up at Tachench we've got cart ruts. And these cart ruts, they don't really know what they are. And maybe that'll be somewhere we should go and actually do a short little video section to put in one of our other videos of tours around Gozo and Malta before we both depart the islands.
Yes, it's on the list.
It's on the list. So the cart ruts, we have to look at those. And basically, I felt that there I was by the cart ruts up at Tachench, and I could see a cart coming towards me, and on the cart it was being pulled by donkeys or something, was this tall chap who was very kind of, you know, quite muscular, obviously sort of used to working in the fields. And he was my brother. And he was called Dun, D-U-N. I just knew that. I just knew he was Dun. And, or Dom, it was like Dom or Dun. I can't remember exactly. And he waved to me. And he was probably only about 14. And I was about 10. But it's just, I've never, I just have that image. And that was it. That was the memory. And so at that point, I decided I have to come and live in Gozo, which of course I've now done.
Okay, well that's certainly something we have to explore, isn't it?
Yes.
Because we have done past life regression, but we ended up in the UK in the, what was it, 16th and 17th century.
Sort of Tudor times.
Just after Tudor times, yeah. So it, that was completely different. So that's definitely, we have got more sessions we have to do to uncover all of this. But astrology, I mean, what sort of took you down the path to astrology, and what inspired you to actually start a YouTube channel?
Okay, well, astrology I first started kind of learning more about in my 20s and finding it very difficult because in those days we didn't have computer programs and apps and things that work everything out for you. You have to do a chart mathematically. And if there was one subject I was absolutely crap at, it was basically mathematics. I couldn't work out angles, triangles, and 180 degrees, what all of that meant. But I tried very hard and I did several courses and learned about astrology. I was fascinated by it. It was a passion, but it was brought, I think what draws a lot of people into these things like the tarot, astrology, and yet astrology is not really, it is not about fortune telling, but I wanted to know what's going to happen to me. It's as simple as that, because what I couldn't bear in those days, and what I still struggle with sometimes, is living with the uncertainty of the future and the not knowing what is going to happen. And I think this is why people are fascinated by anything that is, psychic, esoteric, astrological, tarot-based, because we want to know. And we want to know, ultimately, is everything going to be all right? Am I going to be happy? And of course, that means we're constantly living in the future instead of actually being in the present, because if we make sure the present is okay, the future will actually take care of itself. But astrology has taught me that. And then when COVID, I was having regular astrology lessons with my astrology teacher mentor, Alison Chester-Lambert, who trained under an incredibly famous, anyone who knows a lot about astrology, astrologer called Liz Green, who was a Jungian analyst. And so my teacher, Alison, is also a psychologist. So she was a psychological astrologer. And I thought, this is perfect for me, bringing in the psychotherapy, because I'd worked as a psychotherapist for 20 years in the UK. So I did actually end up seeing real people and working as a therapist. Yes, my God,
scary.
I was let loose on them, exactly. And when COVID hit in 2020, I'd been thinking about starting a YouTube channel for astrology, but it kind of kick-started me because I thought, either I sit here and get really worried and anxious about COVID, or I do something constructive and turn my anxiety into something energetic and use it as excitement rather than anxiety. And so I set up the YouTube channel. I set up I got help with it. I got help to set up a website by chance, but then nothing happens by chance. This lovely lady came into my life, Andrea Britton, who helped teach me about marketing and how to run a channel. And I then also had this tech guy, Jerry, who helped me upload all the videos, although now I've kind of worked out how to do all of this stuff and even add a thumbnail if necessary and things like that. So that is how the channel started, and that was back in 2020. And then I found, you know, that my biggest market is actually the United States and Canada. So moving back to the UK would be really good because I'll be an hour closer, which means either I can take more clients, or at least the time difference is not so great, especially for the Pacific coast. Does that kind of answer your question?
It does. So how do you see your life moving on? Obviously, you've talked about going back to the UK, but you know, what do you think you're going to do next? I mean, obviously, you've sucked me into starting a channel with you.
Yes.
You know, I got brainwashed into it. Totally out of my comfort zone, as I keep saying. Never ever dreamt I would be doing anything like this. But you convinced me. So
Sorry.
obviously
You do it very well.
Oh, thank you. Obviously, you know, running the 2 channels, seeing clients. What else do you see in the future?
Interesting.
What are the plans?
Well, when I came to the decision about leaving Gozo, which was a very big decision, and I would say it's taken me a year to get to the decision being made, it was because it's time to go. It's not going back to, it's going towards my future, which I now feel is in the United Kingdom. And I feel drawn now to the next stage of my life and my psychological development, because I don't think we ever reach a point psychologically where we are suddenly a grown-up and an adult. And I mean, I think you can attest to that. I mean, often it's like dealing with a toddler being my friend and business colleague.
I won't embarrass you.
Toddler on speed, she's
discreet.
described me.
Well, there was an infamous incident, yes, where in public.
Yes, I don't think we'll go down there.
We won't.
Yes.
We won't. But, yeah, I did say, you were like a toddler on speed.
Yes. So basically, how do I see my life unfolding? Well, I'm very excited because we have developed between us a lot of ideas, not just for the channel, but for other projects that we're going to be working on. And I just think my life, astrology-wise, and with the work, the ideas, the projects we've got, is going to get busier and busier. But I'm wondering whether BM or the Blue Light Beings have any views on that.
Well, it's interesting you should ask because...
Because I had your chart to do, but I can't get you to do my chart.
No, I mean, that would be a bit odd, wouldn't it? And probably not terribly enlightened.
But does BM want to tell me what he sees in my future?
Well, do you want to actually know?
I'm curious. I am curious. I'm curious because from my experience so far of BM's wisdom and the blue light beings that guide me, because actually the blue light beings for me have been around for about the last 30 years, but I didn't realise that they were all over the place, so to speak. And, you know, I had a great, an enormous kind of sort of point where basically the blue light being that was with me a lot I guess it was when I was about in my 40s, prevented me from having a very serious car accident, which probably would have killed me. And I will never forget that because it was a very powerful experience. And so I have huge faith in the blue light beings because my experience of them is that they are benign, and certainly my experience through you of BM, so for anyone that's new here, that means blue man. And when we both discovered that we were both had blue light beings that are connecting with us, it was, I have total faith in their guidance and in the direction that they will point me. So, and I have faith in BM. So if he does have anything he wants to impart to me, I'm very willing to listen.
Well, it was very interesting because the other day he actually sort of turned up, didn't he? You were
Yes.
aware of him.
Yes.
Sitting there,
Yes.
reminding you to do something
Yes.
that you said you were going to do.
Yes.
He was sort of,
Yes.
tapping his foot impatiently
Yes.
and, get on with it.
Yes.
And you were, okay.
Yes, I actually
I've done
said it. I said it out loud. I actually said, "Oh, okay, Blue Man." But then I felt a little bit like, why is he appearing to me? Because isn't he, like he belongs to you? It's almost like, your husband turning up to tell me something and you don't know he's here. So it's a really, really weird kind of experience.
No,
because I don't want to take him from you.
No, he is very open to sharing his wisdom with anybody who wants it, basically. So, which is obviously why he suggested there was some way that I did start to convey his messages to people, hence the channel.
Right.
So, he's perfectly open, and obviously it was something he wanted you to do that was going to benefit our channel that he was prompting you to do. So, he was a little bit impatient,
He was.
Drumming his foot and sort of like, get on with it.
And his arms were folded.
Right. Yes, he does do that when he's sort of a little bit sort of, get on with it. What are you hanging around for? But certainly, what he has conveyed to me has been that moving is the right decision. I think he has felt that for quite some time, and
that's good to know.
Directing. And obviously there's been some anxiety for you around it, but he has been very reassuring, saying, it is the right thing. When you have come to the end of time in a particular place, and therefore it is right. Everything is pointing you towards that move. And I think what he has seen evolving is a more sort of multifaceted career. So maybe sort of moving away a little bit from clients, more towards sort of writing, more towards actually being able to share your wisdom with more people. Because if you think about it, working with clients is quite limiting in that you're seeing one person at a time. Whereas the actual opportunity to sort of reach more people is there, especially, via social media, via writing more. So I think that, you'll become more exclusive in terms of the number of clients that you see, which I don't know if that's something that you've thought about.
That kind of makes sense, because I don't have working, or it's not working for me because it's my passion, but making the videos takes up a lot of my time. I love doing the videos because this is the way I can reach many, many people on my astrology channel. And as you're suggesting, BM is saying, share the wisdom I have of the astrology and of self-development, life and psychology, psychotherapy, whatever you want to call it. I think that at the moment I am being very selective about how many clients I allow myself to see a week, because I do find it tiring, because I put so much into it. And I feel that if someone is going to have a session with me, I want them to get the best of me. I don't want to just cram people in. So basically, I suppose it's not a money-making venture. We need money. Obviously, we need money to live, to pay bills and all of that. But I'm not doing it. I don't want to take, I could not take, like some people do, sort of 8 or 10 clients a day. I couldn't possibly do it. And I do want to have time for other things, for the projects that we have, for writing. And it's like, sometimes I say to you, I get overwhelmed by the amount of things that we would like to do, and for this channel and also for my own channel. And I need to pace myself. So maybe he is seeing that I need to somehow, because I know you've said to me before that he's sort of said Penny needs to take time out, and if she needs to rest and sleep, let her rest and sleep.
So you have to, he's always said very strongly that you have to pace yourself. Sometimes there are things that have been planned, we have to change those, we have to work around your energy levels. But I think one of the things that he seems to feel very strongly is that moving will be good for you on an energetic level.
Right. I wonder if that's because we've only recently discovered I'm living on a ley line.
Well, I think that is connected. But you'll be moving somewhere that's a bit more chilled and, with possibly
More
by the
like-minded
seaside.
people as well.
This is another thing as well, because I think that one becomes a little bit isolated here in that there isn't a particularly sort of like-minded group of people here. So, and you could say on one hand that's been a good thing because it's actually brought us together and enabled us to sort of work on all these projects.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it can be a little bit isolating. So, and I think that's very strongly why he feels where you are intending to go could be very good from that point of view, because there will be opportunities for other sorts of collaborations, but also a lot more support in terms of what you're doing as well.
Right. Do you know, that's really reassuring because it's all, you know how if one is not in one's adult self, one seeks validation or permission. And it's almost like BM saying you need to move is the permission I need, but also I know I need to give myself the permission as well. And I feel that if I stay in Gozo now, I stay too caught in a child part of me because I brought my mother here. She'd had a stroke. I was her carer, full-time carer for 16 years. It's time to change things. And I have someone said to me recently, well, what would happen if you decided not to go, if you stayed? And it actually filled me with horror, which is an interesting thing to say, because I just thought it will stagnate me. I need the stimulation of moving, of clearing out lots of stuff, of meeting new people. There's a whole planet out there of interesting, exciting, diverse, fabulous people, and I want to meet them.
Yeah, exactly. It was actually me that asked you that question because I was playing devil's advocate.
It was, wasn't it?
It was, yes. So anyway, I would like to thank you very much for your time and this session, and hopefully everyone has found it very interesting.
I found it very interesting.
You learned something about yourself. So, everybody's had an opportunity now to learn a bit more about both of us. So, hopefully they've enjoyed that and found it very enlightening.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. I really, it's really been a rather interesting kind of experience being on the receiving end. And I just want to congratulate you on your growing confidence in front of the camera. I think it's
Thank you.
Awesome. I think, because I've been doing this now for nearly 5 years. So I've sort of got quite, I suppose, what's the word? Secure with it, assured with it. And so, thank you and well done.
Thank you.
And thank you all for your support and your new subscribes. And we'd love it if you follow us, subscribe to our channel, like, comment. And we have a whole list of interesting topics that we're going to be talking about and investigating over the next few weeks, over the next few sessions, including ley lines, some more stuff about ancient water, myths, and all sorts of interesting things. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye from me and
goodbye from me.
bye.
Bye.